Welcome to Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. Tonight, the great Thanksgiving turkey debate, to brine or not to brine. That is the question. That is, if you are fortunate enough to have a turkey.
It's hard to know who's hungry. More and more working people who are working full-time and come here for dinner because they can't afford to pay for all of their bills and buy food.
Federal food aid goes down as hunger in New York goes up. We'll talk about it, but first, here are this week's online video picks. Video pick number 1, if you don't like hearing the B word, tune out for the next minute. But presidential hopeful John McCain had no problem with the word when someone at a campaign event applied it to Hillary Clinton, and someone else captured it on video.
How do we beat the bitch?
May I give the translation? The way that...
God, I thought you was talking about my ex-wife.
Only making it worse.
But that's an excellent question. You might know that there was a poll yesterday, a Rasmussen poll, identified, that shows me 3 points ahead of Senator Clinton in a head-to-head matchup. I respect Senator Clinton. I respect anyone who gets the nomination of the Democrat Party.
But that's an excellent question. Funny, isn't it, Senator McCain? Can't wait to see what your reaction is if they call Obama the N-word. Not to let Senator Clinton off the hook, here is an online video pick number 2 by 2 Clinton critic filmmakers posting as Bright Thorn, who accuse her of not abusing people, but abusing YouTube.
Hi, I'm John Kramer.
And I'm Aaron Sherholm. And we noticed something interesting when Senator Clinton posted her most recent campaign video to her YouTube channel.
Hi, and thanks for joining me again. Yesterday,
One thing we noticed about her film was how badly the audio was out of sync with the video.
The Clinton camp, who have this huge campaign organization and tons of volunteers, posted the video without ever even watching it.
Being good members of the YouTube community, we attempted to post a text response to the video pointing out the problem with the audio, only to find out that the Clinton camp was not allowing text responses.
We also noticed that they had apparently forgotten to shut off the video responses option, so we just posted our recent video, Hilly the Vampire Slayer, as a response, thinking that it would attract their attention and that they would fix their video's problems. Note the similarities in Senator Clinton's outfits in the 2 videos.
It's been several days now, and not only have they not fixed their video, they've continued to allow video responses and have, in fact, allowed a campaign commercial for Senator John McCain up as a response, alongside our own.
All of which tells us that the Clinton campaign is posting videos to YouTube without paying any attention to them.
Seriously, are they just using YouTube as a free ad space? And is that cool?
We were kind of under the impression that YouTube was going to be a place to share ideas, but if Hillary Clinton isn't listening to her own videos or to responses to that video, that's not exactly what we'd call sharing.
Ironically, the title of her video is "The Conversation Continues."
And when only one person is talking, we wouldn't call that much of a conversation.
250,000 views, that one. But how many of those people will vote in the Iowa caucuses? Then there is Mike Huckabee, the hot underdog du jour in Iowa, with a woman leading on the Democratic side. Huckabee wants you to know that he is a man's man.
An important policy message from Governor Mike Huckabee.
My plan to secure the border, 2 words: Chuck Norris.
Mike Huckabee's a lifelong hunter who'll protect our Second Amendment rights.
There's no chin behind Chuck Norris's beard, only another fist.
Mike Huckabee wants to put the IRS out of business.
When Chuck Norris does a push-up, he isn't lifting himself up. He's pushing the earth down.
Mike's a principled, authentic conservative.
Chuck Norris doesn't endorse. He tells America how it's going to be. I'm Mike Huckabee, and I approve this message. So did Chuck.
Chuck Norris approved.
Now that solves the immigration problem. How again? Maybe a 700-mile fence in the shape of a fist. Yeah, that's it. Video pick number 4. What does a writer for The Daily Show do while on strike? Dip his pen in poison and go after management.
Hello, and welcome to what is obviously not The Daily Show. I'm obviously not Jon Stewart. I'm Jason Ross, one of the show's 14 writers. Our top story, really our only story, the ongoing writers' strike, which began last Monday after talks broke down between writers, seen here working slavishly for your entertainment, and media company CEOs, captured here in their natural habitat. It's about whether writers should get paid when media companies make money using their work online. Writers think they should get paid. Corporations think the writers should go until they're herpes in their nasal passages. And I gotta say, they have a point. I mean, this is the internet. It's not about money. Online, you know, intrinsic worth is measured in things like number of tears shed over Britney Spears by a heartbreakingly gay teenager.
Leave Britney alone!
And while we're sad over this state of affairs, we're clearly not that sad. Besides, media conglomerates say it's too soon to put a dollar value on internet content. They say it... What's that? Viacom is suing YouTube for $1 billion for using its content online? $1 billion? That can't be right. In fact, I can't even believe it. Unless there's some sort of Daily Show-style montage.
Viacom, the parent company of Comedy Central, has sued YouTube for over $1 billion.
$1 billion lawsuit.
$1 billion for copyright infringement.
A whopping $1 billion Clash of the Titans.
More than $1 billion.
Saying, hey, you can't put our stuff out there for free.
You can't put our stuff out there for free. That's a catchy phrase. You mind if we use that and don't pay you?
Jon Stewart, watch out, huh? So far, no video response from the producers. And video pick number 5 from the group New York City Streets Renaissance, the Upper West Side of Their Dreams. But if they close off Broadway like that, where will the M104 go? And that's our online video picks for this week. Well, here it is, Thanksgiving Eve, and I, for one, am all ready with the traditional ingredients. We have cranberries, we have topping for the green bean casserole. Don't you love the French fried onions? We have slab o' cornbread, and we have gravy left over from last year. Is there a date on this? Yeah. And of course, dried up white marshmallows, potato frosting. It's sweet potato frosting, and dried up white meat just like Grandma made. Or can I do better? Our guests say I can't do worse. Ed Levine is founder of a web source devoted to the pleasure, business, and culture of food. Here too, award-winning chef Mike Psilakis. He's the executive chef at restaurants Anthos and Kefi. Hello, guys.
Hey.
Welcome. Happy Thanksgiving.
Same to you.
See, the thing is, Brian, if you just logged on to Serious Eats for the last week, you could do away with the gravy, because although the date is probably 2011.
The gravy, okay, last year's gravy, and the date is actually, you're right, it's 2009. Yeah. Okay, I can't do it, it's too
But
late.
I mean, you could do worse, but I think Mike and I would both agree that with a minimal amount of effort, you could do a lot better.
Okay, that's good. It gives me hope. Oh, by the way, I mentioned that you had a website, but I think I didn't mention the name, which is SeriousEats.com.
SeriousEats.com.
SeriousSeats.com, which got well reviewed in the Times recently.
Yes,
think,
in
right?
the magazine called us the gastronomic super site.
So
I would agree with that.
So,
Thank you, sir.
Chef, we will discuss everything from potatoes to pumpkin pie, but there's one question I have to ask you first. Why does white meat seem to live to dry out?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest thing about white meat, I'm sure Ed is going to agree with me, is just basically overcooking. That's probably the biggest problem that we have, especially home cooks. I think that's their biggest fear is that it has to get done. And sometimes they just get it overdone. But use of the thermometer will really help in that, and you know, something called brining will definitely help with that. I'm sure Ed has covered brine, God knows about
Yeah,
this.
But wait, before we get on to brining,
sure.
the white meat, doesn't the white meat actually take shorter to cook than the dark meat?
Yes, and that's one of the problems. There are two problems. One is white meat doesn't have much internal fat or internal moisture, right? Not as much as dark meat. And the other thing that you raise, the other point that you raise that is really important is the fact that what fancy pants chefs will do when they're roasting a chicken, for example, is that they'll roast the white meat and the dark meat separately, right?
Well, not all the time, but it's a technique that we can use, especially if we butcher it in a way that will leave the bones intact on the breast meat so that we have some protection on the other side, yes. I would agree with that.
Now, you mentioned the internal meat thermometer. What's the ideal temperature for the bird to arrive
Well, I mean,
at?
I think that, you know, the Board of Health says that we should bring it up to about 160 degrees.
That's different state to state, isn't it?
It depends on the state, it depends on the city. But, you know, you're probably safe at around 155. And I think once you start going closer to 160, you have a tendency for it to start to get dried out.
So the choice is moist meat or bacteria.
You know what it is? At the end of the day is you really have, I think, no matter what you're using, I mean, what we do as chefs and what the home cooks really have to rely on is the quality of the ingredients that they use. You start with the best stuff, the freshest stuff, and, you know, you're always going to get a better end result.
Yeah, I think that's true. And now there are a lot of turkeys that haven't been injected. You know, we all grew up with the butterball. Right, but a butterball has been injected with so many things, and there's so many preservatives in a butterball. But you can get many naturally raised turkeys without growth hormones for, you know, even $1.99 a pound. You know, I mean, you can go up to $5 a pound for organics if you have the money, but it's really not necessary. And if you brine it, which the cost of is virtually nil, right? It's some salt, some water,
is that
some
just
sugar.
Soaking it in salt water
Yeah,
overnight?
exactly. You know,
for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, for all intents and purposes, that's what you're doing. You put it in a plastic bag. Now I notice in the grocery stores they're selling brining bags.
Well, you know, I mean, you know, the funny thing about brining is that you have to choose a vessel that's going to be able to fit that turkey. We're talking about turkeys, and especially here in the city, there's not a lot of refrigerators that can fit a turkey plus a vessel to brine it in. So one thing that you have to be careful of is, you know, pick the right vessel that's going to be able, because it has to be submerged. And, you know, you need to make sure that you're going to have the ability to take it. It has to be stored in a refrigerator, even on a brine.
Right, or you can store it if you have an outdoor space. You could store it on a fire escape, you know, if you had to, in a cooler. You can do it in a garbage bag.
But wouldn't soaking it in water overnight, brining it, leave it all kind of, you know, soggy and not crisp on the outside?
No, it doesn't do that. But one of the things that I would recommend, and we do in the kitchen, and you don't really often find this in brining literature, is that you can brine something and then allow it to dry out afterwards. But without question, you have to make sure that before you start cooking, you want to pat it dry. But for me, the best thing to do would be to have that brine come out and then let it sit in the refrigerator on its own and let it air dry. And you'll get a nice crispy skin. I think the biggest issue with brining, and cooking at low temperature is that that skin won't have that really golden, crispy kind of look and feel.
The best way to do that, actually, to guarantee the crisp skin, is actually to preheat your oven to 450. Put it in without cheesecloth, or even with cheesecloth. Don't tent it with foil for the first 20 minutes at 450. Then turn the oven down to 325. And then what you can do at the end, you can actually turn the bird over and do the same thing
on the backside
for the other side of the turkey. In other words, the last 15 or 20 minutes that the bird is in the oven, you go back up to 450, and then you'll get a beautifully crisp.
Not many people do that.
Yeah, people are. We've been told don't turn the turkey over, which makes no sense when you think about it. And it's not that hard to. They first of all, they sell these things
especially
for $2.
the vessels that they have in.
Yeah, but it's not that hard, and it really will get your bird this beautiful golden brown.
Do you have a favorite stuffing?
Yeah, well, I mean, my mom's stuffing is my favorite, and she uses a lot of chicken liver in it. So, I mean, I think it's so specific. Stuffing is one of those things where you can pretty much do anything with the bird, especially
and everyone
turkey.
loves stuffing.
And everybody loves something different. But, brine could also impart flavor as well. I mean, you don't have to just use water. You can use apple cider, for example, especially with turkey. That's a wonderful thing.
You can put in lots of herbs.
You can put a tremendous amount of herb. You can use sugar or not use sugar, depending on what you're trying to do. But, again, when you're using sugar, you really want to make sure that you rinse the bird really, really well before you start cooking it, because here again you're adding an element that cooks, and when that sugar starts to cook, it starts to caramelize, and it'll burn much faster than the bird will actually get to
people
cook.
always talk about maple glazed turkeys, but if you just take a brush and brush maple syrup on your bird, it's gonna
burn.
It's gonna burn. It's not gonna be pretty in the oven.
Yeah, it's gonna burn. It'll burn quicker than it actually cooks the meat.
Yeah. How about some ethnic twists? You have all kinds of Thanksgiving dinners in New York City. Something Mexican, something Asian.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, who says that you can't use ginger in marinating a turkey or in that brine? I mean, you could pretty much put anything in it. My mother imparts a lot of Greek flavors, so you see cinnamon and clove and nutmeg actually influencing that brine. You can do beer if you want, and you can do. It's really, I mean, the platform of flavor profiles is really up to the individual. Do you put garlic? It's up to you. Do you put
Italians will put garlic.
It's up to you.
What's fascinating is, Brian, Gourmet Magazine in their November issue, in their Thanksgiving issue, had 4 different ethnic groups Thanksgiving, and it was based on, I interviewed Ruth Reichel, the editor-chief of the magazine, about it, and I was like, well, it turns out that the 4 cooks in the test kitchen, were all different ethnic groups, and every ethnic group in America has adopted Thanksgiving and transferred some of their customs and their flavors to the Thanksgiving meal, and that's what's fun about Thanksgiving.
Well, enough talk. Let's carve.
All
we
right.
have an actual turkey that we are going to bring out onto the set.
This is a high-budget show.
This is, we spare no expense to give the viewers what they need.
Croissant.
Look at that.
Thank you.
We have a beautiful Greek girl here, too.
And our friends at Salia Maria Bialese lent me this wonderful paring knife.
Fantastic.
And there was a piece in the Times, Brian, I don't know if you saw it today, about a butcher's way to carve a turkey.
We brought it in.
A butcher's way.
Yeah, we even brought it for you.
Come here, I'll hold this up to the camera.
Something fun.
Have to be useful.
I mean, it really isn't that difficult. And the same thing is true when we're talking about. This bird could have been cooked a little bit longer, but when we're talking about carving a bird, if you wanted to get a chicken cutlet or a fillet of chicken or breaking it apart, and basically, we're looking at following along the bone lines here to take off the leg meat. And as you can see, let's see if I can bring it down a little bit. What ends up happening is you get down to what we would call, and I don't know if they could see it here. I'm trying to butcher it from this side.
We don't have an overhead camera, so.
Yeah. see if I can pull it apart. What ends up happening is you have your thigh bone right down here, and the knife itself will go right through that bone and take out the entire piece of meat. It's very, very simple. Once you actually have that bone taken out, and you can see it's very easy to just kind of pop it out.
Man, will you come do that at my house?
It's very, very simple.
That has got to be
it takes this whole thing out.
Perfectly cooked.
And now once you have that, you have again another second slice that you go right down here, and you'll take off the thigh piece, right?
So you separate it from the drumstick.
Separating from the drumstick, and then the breast meat is fairly easy because the breastbone is right down the middle of the bird. So if you follow that right down the middle, you're just following right along the side of the bone, and you could see this bird is, it could have been. It's been cooked for.
It's cooked to 165.
Yeah.
We won't hold it again.
Just brought over from the garden.
Just super fresh. But what ends up happening is
never saw a home oven.
Exactly.
once you cut through it, I'm just going to try and show you guys before we actually pull. What you'll see is that there's this bone on this side, and as you pull apart a little bit like this, let the bones guide you down. And you'll see that you can take the whole breast right off.
That's so amazing. And
this kind of, you see how it just falls off? Now imagine if this was warm and it wasn't cold, it would just kind of really fall right off. And now here you go with an entire breast.
And then what you do, Brian, is you cut
that way.
That way, you don't have to cut the way you cut off the bird, which is the absolute wrong way.
And it's so much more. It's so much more difficult. It's so much more difficult. So now you have this beautiful. If we had let's say we had our carving board right here.
You just do
that.
that.
If we imagined it, and then I was holding it, and Ed would sit here, and he would
just do that, and then and then you see is that you'll get pieces that you'll recognize as being from a turkey.
Right.
And how do you keep the relatives away while you're doing this from going?
That we can't help you.
Listen, you can never, and that's the whole part about I think Thanksgiving and any kind of holiday where you're bringing people together. For me, it's really a function of I love food, and Ed and I have conversations about food from for hours and hours and hours.
You should have seen them sitting here before the show, and they're going to go on for 3 hours.
The pregame show.
I mean, that's how it goes with us. I mean, you can't throw us into a food conversation. But I think home food is really about preparing these gifts. And I think most home cooks get a tremendous amount of joy from preparing the stuff for the people that they've invited, the people, the friends, their family, the people that they actually love.
Yeah,
and that's what it's all about.
The carving was a thing of beauty. I have to say that, unlike the saw that I use, once I give up on the knife because I don't have the spot, and then I go to the saw, it was
my biggest recommendation on this is that when the turkey is cooked, it's really, really easy to carve. It's a little bit more difficult if it's, if you're butchering a raw piece of protein. But once it's cooked, it's really, really simple. You just follow along.
You really follow the natural.
Just kind of pull a little bit, just a little bit, and you can see where you have to go, and that's basically where you are.
All right, let's go on to some of the trimmings. Here's my cranberry sauce recipe. Ready? Open the can at both ends and preserve the can for can rings.
Well, you know what, Brian? It's not bad.
It really is.
It's really not bad. And let me suggest something that's slightly more difficult, but I believe falls within your skill set. And that is, this is the Chris Kimball. You know Chris Kimball from Cooks Illustrated, who's really smart, really fun guy, who when I interviewed him about his Thanksgiving coverage for Serious Eats said, oh yeah, here's what I do for my cranberry sauce. All I do is follow the recipe on the bag of frozen cranberries and add a half a teaspoon of salt.
Oh, frozen cranberries.
Yeah.
Not frozen sauce.
Not frozen sauce, but the bag of cranberries that you can get anywhere. And it's really easy. It's a little bit of sugar, and he has a little bit of salt. And it's awesome.
Little orange peel, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so easy, and again, I think that goes back to the flavor profiles that we were talking to earlier. I mean, you have this simple, basic recipe, and then to that you throw in some ginger if you want to throw in some ginger, add some cinnamon stick if you want to add some cinnamon stick, allspice. I mean, you have all these different options that you could play around with, and we're not talking about complicated stuff here. Even this. I mean, when you really think about it, it's not a difficult process. I think the brine is probably an important part of a home cook because for me, and we had a little bit of a discussion about this earlier, you don't necessarily have to brine turkeys, I don't think, but what it does for the home cook is it gives you a standard deviation of error. It really, really does, because it imparts additional liquid into that bird, and it lets you go maybe to that 160, 162, and even there, after that brine, it'll still be moist and delicious.
Now, before we go on to dessert, all this is relatively simple compared to preparing 3 birds in one inside the other. It's called the turducken. Let's take a look how that's done.
A lot of people, I think, originally did it for the novelty of it, and then down the road, I mean, it's a good product. You know, it's an acquired taste like a lot of things, but you know, with all the bones and all that out, it makes eating duck and chicken and things like that a lot easier because it's all meat. It's like cutting up a loaf of bread. And then you lay the duck in there kind of the same way that the turkey is. Put the seasoning in there, layer in the stuffing mix, lay the products on top of each other, and then we'll tie it all together. This is the turkey, this would be the duck layer, and now we're gonna go with the chicken layer. You could do it on your own, but like I said, you know, you gotta be pretty handy with a knife. You know, you're gonna, probably either lose a finger, or you're gonna just not be happy with, you know, we've got a big facility here, we've got a lot of guys that know what they're doing, so it's more of a manufactured process here. This is the part where doing it at home becomes much more difficult. About 25, 26 pounds, but it's all meat. There's no bones in it, so you get a lot of food. And we made a couple like 5 years ago, and people started calling, and it's gradually grown and grown and grown, and now we're making about 20, 25 during the holiday season. Large parties, yeah, and they don't want to do the legwork because it's pretty labor intensive. You got to kind of know what you're doing. If not, you'll just butcher it.
So,
wow,
Michael, yeah, you were looking bewildered during that, and Ed, you were looking kind of pained.
No. I think the funny thing about turducken, which is a
this is real, by the way.
Yeah, it's real. It's a real thing in mostly in Cajun country, and throughout Louisiana and northern Florida, and you get. It's more, to me, a gimmick than it is delicious. Because I've actually done turducken tastings, and a lot of places will ship you turduckens because it has become a thing.
And are they really what they? I mean, it's like a round robin of breeding.
Absolutely. All it is it's the food equivalent of those things that my parents brought back from the Soviet Union. You know, those wooden things where they get smaller and smaller.
Yeah, matryoshka dolls.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the food equivalent, right? So you have a turkey, a duck, and a chicken, and they're separated by as we saw, by stuffing.
Oh, 3 separate birds.
Exactly. Yeah. 3 separate birds that have been boned, and then they're tied. So it's, you know, it's
all meat.
Yeah, it's all meat. It's all meat all the time. There's no doubt about that.
And you actually never saw that before.
I've never eaten it. I've never eaten it. I have never seen anything like that before. No, it's just not me. Ed is like a guru when it comes to these type of things.
But I don't know about that. But it's interesting to. You know, again, that's a tradition in another part of the country. It's what we were talking about with the Asian traditions. You know, like the gourmet piece had a recipe for Japanese sweet potatoes with ginger and with all these, you know, with all these Asian spices. Makes perfect sense.
Now, I have to tell you that when we go to my cousin's house in New Jersey tomorrow, our assignment is to bring the asparagus. My wife makes a great asparagus dish, and we're bringing these. But my question is it wrong to include greens at all? Is it just too healthy for Thanksgiving?
No, I mean that no. I mean, is it wrong to
now,
have
asparagus? In November.
In November, I don't know. That's
we've
another
got to
question.
Talk to you and your wife.
You know, there's a seasonality chart that we kind of have to follow, or at least we follow.
Right.
You
so
know,
no locavore would be eating asparagus.
Exactly. That asparagus is by way of outlying areas of Santiago.
Yeah, it's not from a local farmer, that's for sure. But you know, again, you know what's happened now, especially with food, and what we see more and more is that with the ability for food to travel in the air, there opens up these doors to have things that, you know, years ago asparagus right now would be terrible. They're not so bad.
Right.
But the purist, and Ed is without question the purist, says like if it's not from somewhere local, then really how good could it possibly be?
Well, to me, local even trumps organic.
Absolutely.
You know, local, responsibly grown.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%.
Local vegetables trump So you
can spray pesticides up till the roof as long as you do it in Westchester?
No, I said responsibly grown. That is for people who take care of the land. And you can get to know farmers and get to know who you're
you wouldn't eat a
from.
tomato in the wintertime, or if you do eat a tomato, it just doesn't taste all that good.
Yeah. No, you
so,
can tell
when you think about that, and you could really tell that, the same thing is true with asparagus.
I thought I was going to get praised for
no,
these facts.
Sorry. Brussels sprouts.
Absolutely.
Tell your wife to
roasted
make Brussels
with bacon.
sprouts.
Yummy.
Roasted with bacon. It's all good.
Cauliflower.
Time for
Yummy.
dessert. Time for dessert.
All right, we're ready.
Pumpkin pie?
Pumpkin pie, I got into trouble on Serious Eats last week when I posted, and the title of my post was, "Does anyone really like pumpkin pie?"
Oh, come on, Ed.
And it was
I do.
Yeah,
there's a lot of people out there.
Hundreds of people responded. Are you kidding, Ed? We love pumpkin pie. There were a few pumpkin pie haters. It's a little bit like, like.
I think it's a texture thing, right? If you like the smooth pies, like if you like, chocolate cream pie, that kind of thing, then you probably like pumpkin pie.
If I like pumpkin pie, if it gets that nice custardy texture.
Yeah, milk or cream.
To me, the cream makes the custard texture.
I think you have to go with the cream. I think the high fat really helps on that one a lot. But I think the big issue with most people and pumpkin pie is really the vegetal part of it. I really think it's one of those desserts where it's it's a sweet dessert at the end of the day, but it's not like chocolate. It's not like this is dessert. This is undefined. Like no question about it.
So you have to dial down the sweetness.
You kind of have to really dial down that sweetness. And I think when you have a bad pumpkin pie, it's because it's overtly sweet and it's so cloying.
It's nothing else.
And it's nothing else. So if you find that balance and you really use the spices that go so well with pumpkin, it's cinnamon and nutmeg and clove and all these, allspice, really, it's just fantastic flavor profiles. And I think the big thing about it, it's just kind of like margarita soup, which is a traditional soup that we have at Easter time. It's just one of those things where you get excited because it's that time of year you're getting a pumpkin pie.
The pecan pie can be cloying too.
Absolutely.
Overtly cold.
And apple pie, here's the thing, in general, it's not just pumpkin pie, so much bad pie in the world. There's just there's just a lot of bad pie in the world.
It's not complicated either. That's the whole thing. I think baking is one of those things where you have to measure everything out, and that's why it's not my favorite thing to do because it's scientific. But at the end of the day, you follow a recipe and it works.
So guys, it sounds like all this will take a long time to eat, and we came across a video that simply solves this problem.
Will it blend? That is the question. Today is Thanksgiving, and we've invited my toothless Uncle Floyd to dinner. In honor of him, we're going to make his dinner his way. Now, Uncle Floyd loves dark meat, so we're going to start with a nice roasted turkey leg. And then, of course, what's Thanksgiving dinner without cranberries? And dessert, his favorite pumpkin pie. And of course, salt and pepper to taste. Nice and warm. Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you. Enjoy your meal.
Yes, it blends, and you should see what that machine can do with an iPhone. So, all right. Now, what do you do the next day? What do you do Friday?
I tend to actually fry up my stuffing, and so I'll make that have that be the bread for the turkey sandwich. So, you know, remember you got a lot of butter and stuffing, so you can make it really crunchy. You know,
it's a wonderful thing to do.
And then you put 2 little rectangles of stuffing in the fry pan. You brown it. You get it all nice and crisp. Then you take your turkey, and you put the turkey between the brown and crisp stuffing.
Do you reheat the turkey in any way, or just slice it for the sandwich?
You can reheat the turkey, or you can also just heat some gravy, and that takes care of that.
But how to reheat the turkey? That's the question.
I reheat the turkey usually in the microwave. I have to say. You know,
I think honestly, it's probably the best way to do it, unfortunately. But you know, and I'm not a big microwave fan, but this type of stuff, even like lasagna and things like that, after it's been done and sitting and it's really ice, I mean, like brick cold. You know, I mean,
the microwave is perfect.
It's
for
a
those
valuable
kinds of
tool
food.
for those type of things, especially for the home cook.
And Saturday and Sunday. No, I'm just kidding. This has been really fun. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Now, a dark vision of Thanksgiving from writer William S. Burroughs. Perhaps it will help us bridge the gap from gluttony to hunger, which we will discuss next.
Thanksgiving Day, November 28th, 1986. Thanks for the wild turkey and passenger pigeons destined to be shit out through wholesome American guts. Thanks for a continent to despoil and poison. Thanks for Indians to provide a modicum of challenge and danger. Thanks for vast herds of bison to kill and skin, leaving the carcasses to rot. Thanks for bounties on wolves and coyotes. Thanks for the American dream to vulgarize and falsify until the bare lies shine through. Thanks for the KKK, for nigger-killing lawmen feeding their notches. For decent church-going women with their mean, pinched, bitter, evil faces. Thanks for Kill a Queer for Christ stickers. Thanks for laboratory aids. Thanks for prohibition and the war against drugs. Thanks for a country where nobody is allowed to mind his own business. Thanks for a nation of finks. Yes, thanks for all the memories. All right, let's see your arms. You always were a headache, and you always were a bore. Thanks for the last and greatest betrayal of the last and greatest of human dreams.
This is CUNY TV, the City University of New York.
This is Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. It is hard to believe there is still hunger in America. We are not just the wealthiest nation in the world today, we are the wealthiest nation in the history of the world. And hunger in New York is up. Federal food aid is down. The Food Bank of New York City is warning of a serious shortage this winter of food for the hungry, and it has already begun, really. So hello, Washington. New York needs a food surge. Take a look at this video about the work of the Food Bank for New York City and the many ways that people try and tackle hunger.
It's hard to know who's hungry. More and more working people who are working full-time and come here for dinner because they can't afford to pay for all of their bills and buy food.
Here I know I can come and have a hot, nutritious meal without having to feel any shame or insecurity about it.
Food is great here. It's not good here, it's great here.
We couldn't do what we do without the food bank.
I've seen you
Cafe is one of the ways we're addressing the growing problem of childhood hunger. We believe that the best recipe for a healthier generation comes from a combination of balanced meals, nutrition education, and fitness.
With me now, Joel Berg, Director of the New York City Coalition Against Hunger, and Bissi Eder Abdullah, Executive Director of Imani House, a multi-service community organization founded in Liberia, now also in Brooklyn. Welcome both of you to the program. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Joel, first talk about the food bank for New York City. What is it exactly and who do you serve?
Particularly, I work for the New York City Coalition Against Hunger, which is an independent organization. The food bank is a great organization that provides food to soup kitchens and food pantries. We are an umbrella group of the more than 1,200 pantries and kitchens, many of whom get food from the food bank as well. So we do advocacy work, we do technical assistance work, we do education, and we do leadership development with those pantries and kitchens.
Right. You know, maybe you should even, for some of the viewers, separate out a food pantry from a soup kitchen. What's the difference?
Well, a soup kitchen is the more stereotypical program. It dates back to the old Irish hunger famine and really came into prominence in America during the Great Depression. And it's not really soup anymore, but it's hot food. There are a few hundred of them in New York City, and they serve mostly men, a lot of homeless people, a lot of the stereotypically hungry people, people with mental illness problems, perhaps substance abuse problems, who knows which came first. Food pantries are actually 2/3 of the agencies in New York City. They serve boxed and canned food, and most of the people who go there have homes. They're just poor. It's families, it's immigrants, it's working people who just don't earn enough to feed their families.
Women go there because they actually know how to cook the ingredients that they eat.
They do. I don't want to be sexist in any way, shape, or form, but the truth is in our society, still the bulk of food preparation duties at home fall to women, even though they're often working 1, 2, 3 jobs outside the home in addition to all their work in the home.
Bissi, where does Imani House come in?
Well, we're a food pantry. As you said, we started in Liberia, West Africa, and unfortunately, I got into the center of a very difficult civil war. So I saw what hunger does to people. I saw marasmus, I saw kwashiorkor, when children swell up or where they become emaciated. Finally, when it got too difficult, I came back to the United States where I was born, which is Brooklyn, my home. And I was shocked to see the amount of homeless people on the street. But what shocked me most, that basic civil right or basic human right, people not being hungry, was a real issue here. With very little support from my organization here in the United States at the time, one of the things I could do was open a pantry without having to invest any money. And so I began to do that and feed the homeless and feed the many immigrants. And what I found out was, I'm a pull yourself up by your bootstraps, although we all know that's physically impossible. And I don't like doing handouts. I don't like receiving it. I don't like giving it. And I felt very empathetic, because I come from a poor background, for the people who were getting food. And we hoped that we would close it down one day by opening other services, because people need other services. They need jobs, they need training, they need to learn English. But when September 11th came, it seems like it's just been constantly downhill now. And so it's impossible to close any food pantry. People now use food pantry for their weekly groceries, so they go 5 days a week sometimes.
What's the relationship with September 11th? Because
September
by the stats,
11th,
they say that the economy is booming here.
Oh no, it might be booming in, I'm actually in Park Slope, so it might be booming for the gentrified wealthy who are coming from the suburbs back to the city and investing, but it's not booming for the majority, who are the immigrants, who are the undereducated, who are the women with so many children and the breakdown of the family leaving the single-headed household. So no, it's not getting better. We actually did a survey, because again, I was saying I need to close this pantry. I need to find out what can you tell me as a pantry participant? What is your problem? Why? Is it your fault? Is it someone else's fault? What do you think about your own condition?
And then as a multi-services agency, you don't just give them food, you then try to deal with the root cause?
And we try to deal, well, I don't know, root cause is a lot more political than I can get.
Or underlying condition
jobs,
of the individual.
Yes, helping people find jobs, helping people learn English, helping people get GEDs. Yeah. But it seems like almost like a bottomless pit in terms of making that the impact. It hasn't changed the situation. In fact, it's increasing, as Joel has said.
We're going to show another video. The hunger problem runs wide and deep. It involves poverty, involves education, nutrition. Let's watch a minute of this video in which one of our guests, Joel Berg, happens to be featured.
More than 30 million Americans face hunger. Over 1 million of them New Yorkers. Worse, some 400,000 children are dealing with food insecurity at a time of their life when they should be learning how to grow. The New York City Coalition Against Hunger provides assistance to 1,100 food sites.
It's absolutely unacceptable that the richest city in the country, in the richest country on the planet, in the history of the world, is letting children face hunger.
Childhood hunger is endemic in single-parent families, but also attacks families where both parents work. Not only is New York's cost of rents one of the highest in the nation, but one of the main reasons children go hungry here is that federal assistance programs are underutilized. Most eligible kids don't attend free after-school snack programs, and 80% of eligible students in New York don't get free school breakfasts.
The good news is we can virtually wipe out the entire problem overnight simply by increasing the use of existing federal nutrition assistance programs like the school breakfast program, like the after-school snacks program. There's no reason we shouldn't do that immediately.
Besides meals in school and during the summer, USDA, for instance, offers an after-school meal program for eligible children from ages 5 to 12. The program is at no charge, provided the child participates in a qualified program that has an enrichment or educational activity.
If you want public education to work, children have to be well fed. Solving childhood hunger is really a prerequisite for solving virtually every other social problem in America.
That video from East Side Entrees, Joel, I'm going to ask you about a decline in federal food aid. But you said in the video that the federal assistance that is available now is being underutilized. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes, the government has purposely made it difficult for low-income people to get these benefits. You know, the Social Security program probably has about 99.999% participation among eligible people. That's because we've sent the message, you deserve this benefit, and they've made it easy for people to get it. With food stamps or WIC or some other programs, we've sent the message, you really don't deserve this benefit, and they've bent over triply, quadruply backwards to make it difficult for people to get the benefit. It's a false comparison. A lot of people get a lot more money out of Social Security than they put in, and a lot of people who get food stamps and WIC paid for those programs by working and paying taxes over their lifetime. So I think we should treat all government benefits equally and make it easier for people who are eligible to get them.
Now, I understand there is a crisis right now, tonight, at this moment, in the food bank system in New York City, and it has a lot to do with the federal government.
Yes, the New York City Coalition Against Hunger just conducted our annual survey of pantries and kitchens, and we found a record 59% of the agencies in the city don't have enough food to meet the growing demand. Now, President Bush, he visited a food bank in Richmond, Virginia this Monday, and he had the chutzpah, if I might say, to urge Americans to use their personal dollars to donate. And this is from a federal government that has cut federal support for pantries and kitchens by 79% since 2002. There's been a 12 million pound cut in food in New York City alone. Yes, people should donate, and we certainly want the private support, but the government with the real resources has to step up to the plate.
Bissy, there was an article in the New York Times last month about how food pantries are seeing empty shelves because they're literally running out of food because of this in a way that they haven't in past years. Is that affecting Imani House?
It's absolutely affecting us. Increase. We had 10 families that came today that we had to turn away. We were promised turkeys from the food bank, and this is the first year we didn't get them. So we had to raise $700 to buy turkeys because we always give the families turkeys. One of the things I wanted to comment on was the misrepresentation of the after-school feeding. The government cut funds to after-school programming, and they cut the ACS program. So if children are not in school after school, they can't very well get a snack. And so those are the kinds of games that are being played. Our shelves are empty. They were empty yesterday. We got a food delivery. They're empty again today. And that's how it's been going. And
what do you need from whom for that to change?
There needs to be a whole lot of changes. There needs to be a lot of immigrant money was cut when Bloomberg came in, which means money is not going to literacy programs and English programs so that people can get better job training. There needs to be more affordable housing. According to our survey, over 75% of the people felt that they had to pay rent before they ate. You know, so you have, it's not one dynamic, it's multi-layered, and it's very, very unfair for the nonprofits. We get no money to do this. We do it as a charity. And how do you expect a nonprofit to hire staff and bring in people to feed people, and then you just say it's charity? I think Bush is wrong.
But in the short term, you had the turkeys last year, you had the turkeys the year before.
We've always had them,
Something
yes.
has changed.
Something changed. This is the very first year.
Federal cuts?
It has to be federal cuts. Even though the food bank is not passing it on to us, they have cut our food tremendously. We used to get about, I would say 3 years ago, $35,000 a year in food support. Last year we got $11,000 in food support. And we weren't told until last week that there would be no turkeys for the families who were depending on it.
And I just want to stress that the Food Bank and City Harvest, another wonderful organization in New York City, both are doing the best they can with extraordinarily limited resources. So they give out every pound they get in as soon as they get it. The broader issue we always bring to is that the federal government isn't making food stamps available, and we don't have programs to ensure, and economic policies to ensure, that people working hard and playing by the rules, as they say, earn enough to feed their families. That's the bottom line.
I mentioned a Times article on this from last month, and it cited two separate negative trends. Federal food donations, that is from the federal government, have been stagnant for 5 years while the need has been going up. And a separate federal program that buys extra crops from farmers has actually been downsized by about 2/3. Can you separate those out?
Yes, there is a program, mandatory funding provided by Congress, and if Congress ever passed the Farm Bill, it's now dead in the Senate because the Republicans have filibustered against it. There would be this extra mandatory spending from Congress. But the Secretary of Agriculture, who is a member of the President's cabinet, and I worked for the previous Secretary of Agriculture in a previous administration, I want to be clear about which administration I work for, does have vast discretionary authority to buy a lot more food. But I do want to point out that the food going to pantries and kitchens, even though we desperately need it, that's not the answer. Today in New York City, there are 321,000 fewer people receiving food stamps than 11 years ago today. That equals a loss of more than $500 million of federal funds. So the total city spending from the city government on pantries and kitchens is about $12 to $14 million. You can't cut $500 million for food stamps and then expect $14 million in food pantries to make up for it.
We're almost out of time, but Bissy, you mentioned that your organization was founded in Liberia, yes, and the conditions that you found there during the war there. Mm-hmm. The statistic that I hear from UNICEF is that more than 20,000 children in the world die each day from hunger-related causes, most mm-hmm. of them preventable. Right. And we see the pictures of the shriveled bodies of young children on the world news. It's not that kind of hunger in New York.
Well, I would say it actually is. It hasn't gotten to the point where you actually can see it. We're a very cosmetic society. But why would we be like 37th in the developing world for infant mortality? Why is our infant mortality higher than in Cuba? Those are the kind of things that tell you something is not right with nutrition. The hospitals have the care. If you're poor, you get Medicaid. But why are the children still dying? So I would say we need to look a little closer at that.
Real quick, how can people help Imani House?
People can get involved as volunteers. They can get involved as community activists and advocates for us. We've done our survey. We're going to submit the results. We would very much like politicians to listen to what Joel is saying, what the coalition is saying. People need to have a way of getting food stamps more easily, but they also need affordable housing. The elderly needs to be taken care of. They're not going to work, right? Social Security is not enough. Some people get $10 in food stamp. Jesus Christ.
Thank you both very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Finally tonight, a new kind of music video. The musician featured here plays neither the drums nor the piano. By the way, the turkey that we carved earlier in the show, I'm happy to announce that Bissy is taking it to deliver to one of the families that Amani House serves. And that's it for tonight's show. We are here live Wednesday nights at 7:30. You can sign up for our free podcast at CUNY.TV. And please tune into my daily radio show, The Brian Lehrer Show, weekday mornings at 10 on WNYC. Tomorrow morning, Thanksgiving morning, comedian George Carlin. That's at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning on 93.9 FM and AM 820 WNYC. Have a great night and happy Thanksgiving.